Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Scoburg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are excited to be here today with Cheyenne Jock with Best Buddies, and she is going to be talking to us today and going over a checklist to gaining employment for our loved ones with a disability. I always like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you're new to our webinars today, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you've been attending in the past, we're glad you're back. We are in webinar mode today, which means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know that you're there. The chat box is enabled, which means that today, as we're going through the presentation, if you have questions, we invite you to put your questions in the chat box. I'm going to be monitoring that today for Cheyenne, and we'll read out those questions, and we will take questions throughout this presentation. So don't be shy. If you have a question, probably somebody else does too. I love the questions that we get in the chat box throughout our presentations. This presentation is being recorded. It will be later posted on our podcast as well as the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. If you are listening to this by podcast, you can reach out to us at contact@cpgcares.net and request a copy of the slides. We will be happy to provide a copy of the slides. For those of you that are signed up today for this webinar, following the webinar, you will get an email with a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides. And I always just like to tell people that just so you know that you don't have to take notes of every single thing that we say because you are actually going to get a copy of these slides as well. Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We have over 30 years of experience. We are an advisory and consulting firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. And we always just like to mention to people, when it comes to planning for special needs, it's important to work with a specialist. And that is because it's really, really important that we have money in the right buckets and that we preserve the eligibility for our loved ones for state and federally funded programs. And a lot of people aren't aware of that because they, quite frankly, just made too much money or had too much money all these years, and their child maybe hasn't qualified for things in the past. But that all changes when our kids turn 18, even if they're under a full guardianship. There are programs and such as SSI and Medicaid and other things that they may be eligible for that they weren't eligible for in the past. So we help people put plans in place, future care cost estimates. We help people open ABLE accounts. Just really plan for the future. People ask us questions like, how much do I need to fund a special needs trust? How do I make sure that I can retire and stay retired and also be able to fund the future care for my loved one? We answer questions like that. We do a lot of advocacy through our webinars. We have the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, and it is my heart. What was kind of where all this came from. I am a parent, have 4 kids, 2 with special needs that have transitioned into adulthood, and I eat, sleep, and breathe this. This is what I do. And what I found is that it was incredibly hard. Why is everything so difficult? Everything is so hard. And so the YouTube channel was born, and it is full of webinars. There's over 300 webinars on topics on planning for special needs or other resources. We partner with other organizations all across the state, attorneys, organizations that help individuals with disabilities to help equip you and give you the tools and resources that you need for free to be successful on your planning journey. So you can subscribe to that YouTube channel for free, for sure. So Cheyenne, we're happy to be here with you today. Again, Cheyenne is with Best Buddies. Tell us a little bit about Best Buddies first before we dig into this checklist on gaining employment.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. So Best Buddies is a nonprofit, and if you'll go to that next slide, it should have a little description about Best Buddies in our mission statement. We are an international nonprofit organization. We work to end isolation for people with disabilities, whether it is social, economic, or in leadership development. We have several different programs. I'll talk about what all we offer here in just a moment, but we are in countries all over the world. We also have programs in every state in the US as well. I've been with Best Buddies since 2020. I'm the director of jobs, so I oversee our programs in the DFW area, Houston, and in Austin. I've been working with this population for over a decade, and so I've gotten to see a lot of different sides to living with a disability. So I am excited to talk to you guys about jobs and our jobs program. That next slide that we have here will show you a little bit about our programs. So we have 4 programs. Most people know us for our friendship program, where we match people with a disability to people without so that they can form a really inclusive friendship. We have that in elementary all the way through college, as well as an adult program as well. We also have a leadership development program. We teach public speaking, self-advocacy skills, all kinds of leadership skills that you need to be just living in this crazy world. Oh, and then we have an inclusive living program. It's not in Texas, and I am in Texas, so I don't have a ton of information about the living program, but we do have that in Miami, DC, Atlanta, and LA, I believe. We just opened, DC's been open for a while. We just opened the other 3 markets in the last few months. And then what the program I kind of live is the integrated employment, where we help people with disabilities find competitive and integrated employment. Now we can go to that next slide. This is just a little overview. I always say that any goal you've ever had in life, whether it is getting married, going to college, buying a car, buying a home, having children, whatever it is, whatever goal you have in life, you need one of 2 things or both. You either need a skill or you need money. And a job can really help us reach all of those goals. And it helps these participants that we serve earn an income, pay taxes, and continuously and independently support themselves. So we are super excited to be able to do the work that we do. The next slide, I just have a few key terms for you guys so that you know kind of what I'm talking about if you hear these words. So when I say participant, just know that that means that that is a person with a disability receiving services. Some people, we'll talk about VR and vocational rehab, they may call them customers. Other people call them clients. Some people have fun names. We say participant. So just know if I say participant throughout this presentation, that that's who I'm referring to. You'll also need to know what a job coach is when you're entering this journey. So a job coach is someone who is employed to work side by side with a person with a disability to help them learn the job. Most of the time, this is on the job site. It can be done off-site as well, but working side by side with them, making sure that they know all of the tasks that they're responsible for. Then you also have a job developer. So that's the person that's doing all of the work prior to the person actually going to work. So helping teach some soft skills, doing some career exploration, helping build a resume, helping match them to an employer that may be a good fit. So sometimes a job developer and a job coach are the same person and do it all. In Texas, our employment consultants do it all because we want to stick with the person from the beginning through the end. But sometimes people may pass it off to another person. You'll also need to know vocational rehab or VR. So what this is this is a government program. It's a bucket of money that funnels down into the states. So we are free to all of our participants. We don't charge for our services, but we do get paid from our VR agency in Texas. That's the Texas Workforce. So there's a big bucket of money given by the federal government, funneled down into each of these VR agencies within the state. And then those VR agencies pay providers like Best Buddies to actually provide the services. So when you hear VR or vocational rehab, just know that they're kind of the middleman between the pot of money and the actual services being provided. So this actually, this number is a tad bit outdated, that 82%. It's actually about 84% now, and it's hovered between 80 and 85% for at least a decade, at least as long as I've been doing this work. But about 84% of people with IDD are unemployed or underemployed, which is a devastating number. Those are people who want to work, who can work, but are not given the opportunity. So that's why people like me have jobs to help provide that support, compared to 10% of people without IDD who are unemployed. So just know that's what the statistic is, but know that there is hope because we are making a difference every day. And I want you all to know what kind of jobs exist for people with IDD. So the first thing that I want to show you, this is a picture of a sheltered workshop. And it These exist, they're being phased out as the laws change. They're really on their way out in Texas finally after some laws have been enacted. And those laws are there to protect people from being exploited. Sometimes sheltered workshops work for people. What this is a workshop or a room full of people with disabilities, and usually overseen by a direct support person or a job coach. And it's typically piecemeal. So in this picture, they're putting together rivets. In my hometown, we used to have one where they put together sunglasses, and for every pair of sunglasses, they got paid a dime or something like that. So some people like this type of work because it's rote, it's repetitive. You have the support of a job coach there on site. However, it can go into exploitive because you're not paying competitive wages. You may work an 8-hour day and only walk away with a couple of bucks. So it works for some people. It's not a model that Best Buddy supports, and these are becoming fewer and fewer, but I wanted you to know kind of what exists out there and what these terms mean.
Cheyenne, in our communities, there's, kind of divided people and thoughts as far as the non-competitive wage versus a competitive wage. And some families, quite honestly, are totally cool with a non-competitive wage because they're thankful and happy that there is something that their loved one can do, and their loved one finds purpose and enjoyment and community and all of those things. And then there's others that are, very much against the, the non-competitive wage. And so when you're talking about the programs today that you're talking about, you're talking more of competitive wages. Is that what you're speaking of today?
Yes, yeah, and we'll talk about what we consider competitive wages. Some people, the federal government says that competitive wage is minimum wage. I consider competitive wage as what everyone else in that same position is making. And I've had many participants who the money is not the issue because you get so much from working, and maybe they don't need the money. They just want the social interaction and they just want to give back. Which is why I've seen people at these sheltered workshops that they really love it and they do find meaning and they find a community there. So that's why I like to include it, because it is an option for some people. Some people are really against them, but some people are really for them. So just to know that there is an option out there. But yeah, Best Buddies, the model that we work in is competitive and integrated employment. And I kind of define that here in just a minute, but by competitive, we mean working at least part-time, which is 14 hours a week, and making, again, at least minimum wage, or I go a step further and say, I advocate for my participants to make at least what everyone else is making in that same role.
And so some of these environments like this may be a good first step, like a first start. Like if you're wondering, you don't know if your loved one could work or how it would work out or whatever, this could be a good first start even as well. So just
absolutely,
some different options out there.
You can learn a lot of good skills in those types of settings because it's a safe place to learn those good habits like following directions and working with others and staying on task. So you can get a lot of good skills from those situations as well. This is another opportunity for people. This isn't a work enclave. So this is sometimes people call it group work, but it's a group of people with disabilities working again under the supervision of a job coach. These placements, I've seen them work as many as 40 hours a week. I've seen people make really competitive wages. I've seen this. I think this image is from H&M, but I've seen these in large corporations many times. And people, again, really enjoy it. It's not a program, again, that Best Buddies doesn't work in this model, but this is another option for people if they want to work under and have that long-term support and that supervision of a job coach there on site. The only reason that Best Buddies doesn't do this type of work is just because it's not completely integrated. So you may not be interacting with people with and without disabilities. They're typically kept separate. But again, it's a really good option for some people to learn really great skills. And again, some people need that more direct supervision. So this is also a good option.
Can you speak to maybe some of our kids that have a little pushback on the job coach because basically they feel like that's a label on their head of disabled and makes people treat them differently. And so they really need a job coach, but they're reticent to to do that because they don't want to be labeled. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just sent this text message yesterday. I have a friend who they're working to get their son a diagnosis of autism. And I said, I love labels because labels mean resources, and that's what we're all about. So I've worked with many people who don't want to work with a job coach on site. So I've done some job coaching off site where we work through some of those skills off site. It is a little trickier to not be there. Um, and it can be difficult to disclose in any situation or ask for an accommodation. But I think people just need to understand that we all have accommodations in our lives. The fact that I'm working from home right now and I don't have to drive an hour to my office is an accommodation. We all have different things that help us be more successful. And sometimes that is the help of a job coach. I train my job coaches on my team to really be as discreet as possible. We don't disclose information without the participant's consent. I've had people come up to me and ask me about a participant or their experience or their skill level, and I just told them, well, you can go ask him. You can, and so it's also the job coaching. The job coaches are teaching the employees the same thing, and so I think when we go into my goal is to make this normal. We don't want the job coaches to stand out. They should just be an accommodation there, just like working from home, just like wearing glasses, just like wearing a hearing aid. It shouldn't be something that's really taboo to talk about. It should be really easy. And I really want people to be able to accept that and know that it's a resource that helps you be more successful.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Now, when we talk about again, this is kind of something I've already said, but when we're looking for jobs for our participants, we want to make sure, number one, that they're meaningful, that they match the customers or the participants' interest and their skill set. We want to make sure that they're integrated so they're working side by side people with and without disabilities. And we want to make sure that they're competitive. And we can go to that next slide. And I just kind of define what it means, what I mean when I say competitive and people working and integrated, working side by side people without disabilities. Now, when I say a quote unquote real job, I mean that I am very anti-mascot. I don't want anyone to be hired just to sit around because they have a disability and the company wants to look good or meet a quota. We want them to actually be contributing. We want them to be able to advance and learn more skills and grow in that job. And then if you hit the next slide, you can see this little video of Beth. She's one of my participants. And she was working in a really great, we don't have to play that video because it can sometimes be kind of catchy. But here are some of our employer partners as well. Yep. So that's Beth. She loves working in the back room. She doesn't really like interacting with customers. So we really had to find her a retail job where she could do all of the back end work. So she got a job at the Confidence Shop, which was a local boutique. And she was doing all of the processing behind the scenes that you see and really helping. She almost worked herself out of a job one time because she was going so fast and was going so good that they ran out of inventory for her to work on. But the next slide shows some of the employer partners that we've worked with. And again, we work with all kinds we have food service on there. We have retail. We also have more corporate partners like Accenture and JLL, because we know that everyone is different and not everyone wants to work at McDonald's. Some people do, and that's great. And we can help them do that. But we also want to find a job that means something to them. Now, this is our process. So what we do when we first meet a person, we really want to do an assessment. I like to do it in their home if that's possible because you really get to know a person, but we want to understand what their interests are, what their strengths are, what their experience has been, what challenges may exist. We want to get all of that information so that we really know who a person is. And then we're going to start working to create a resume, practice interviewing, working on some of those soft skills. Maybe we're working on some social skills, or we're working on communication. And simultaneously, we are also working in the background to work with employers. I spend most of my time training employers on how to be more inclusive. And so we're matching the participant to the job that matches their skill sets and their interests and making sure that it's a really good fit. And then we want to support them during the interview, the onboarding, and the training. We want to make sure that they know everything that they need to do, where they're really heavy in the beginning, making sure they know all that they're responsible for what they need to do, who to go to if they don't know what to do. So we're setting up any accommodations, setting up that support network, and then we fade support because we want them to be independent. They never leave our caseload. We're always checking in with them. We have people who've been in our program for several years, and we consider them graduated, but we still check in on them at least once a quarter so that we can make sure, because we know things happen in life. You could be at a job for 3 years and all of a sudden you get a new manager and things change. Or maybe you get a raise or a promotion and you need some coaching to learn new skills. So we are there for the life of the placement or until someone says they don't want to work with us anymore. But we do want to offer that independence at work. So these are just some numbers kind of showing you what our participants our averages are. Now, on average, a person with IDD nationally, the national average is 14 to 15 hours. Our participants work on average a little over 20. On average, the person with IDD will make $9.45 to $9.75 an hour. Our participants work just over on average, make just over $15 an hour. We do have those people who work at a lower wage because they do want to protect their benefits. And we have people who are looking for a long-term career and going into programs like the Ticket to Work program that allows them to make higher wages. We've made over 1,000 placements in the US and over 1,800 worldwide. We have over 300 in development, meaning they're currently seeking employment. And then we have about a 94% retention rate for 2023. We have a really good retention rate, I think, because of 3 reasons. Number one, we work really hard to prepare our participants. Number two, we work really hard to prepare our employers. And then we play really good matchmakers to make sure that it's a really good fit. So where do you start? So the very first thing I tell people is connect with your local VR. In Texas, again, that's the Texas Workforce Commission, but I say go ahead and get that started because it can be a lengthy process. It is a government agency, and a lot of times it can be a 4-letter word for me to even mention that, but it can offer so many resources. If you can get through the paperwork process and the meetings with the counselors, I promise it can be worthwhile because there are so many resources. There's accommodations, job coaching, job support, job counseling and guidance, assistive devices, and referrals to other community agencies. This is typically free for people who have IDD or hearing and vision impairments. They also help with veteran services. There's a lot of resources there, but it can be a lengthy process. So I always say that that's step one.
And I also just like to add here on VR, it is basically for individuals who have a disability that is an impediment or could be an impediment to employment. So they don't have to be deaf or blind. They don't have to have an autism diagnosis, a diagnosis. It could be a physical diagnosis. It could be a brain thing. It could be any number of things that could cause an impediment to employment, which could allow them to qualify for VR. And I just like to say that they have deep pockets, state and federally funded grants that pays for these services for folks. And so I guess what you're saying, Cheyenne, is that if you're involved with VR, your services at Best Buddies are free, but you get paid through these grants through VR. So they come through the door of VR, but they have access to Best Buddies as a result of being basically a VR customer, is I think what you're saying.
Yes, so your VR agency will give you, they call it informed consent, and they give you a whole list of providers, and you can choose the provider that works best for you. Best Buddies is one of them. We're not right for everyone. And typically, again, during that assessment, we could tell, hey, we might not provide the support that you need, or you might be better off, working with another organization, because we want to make sure that it's a good fit. But they can typically give you a list of providers in your area so that you can pick the one that works best for you. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these, but this is just some programs that are available through the Texas Workforce. Other states have similar programs. They may be called something different, but I just wanted to put this up here so that you guys know that there's something for everyone, whether you are still in high school, looking for your first job, whether you're going into an internship, looking for a long-term placement. Maybe you already have a job and you just need some support managing your disability or some social skills support. There is an option for everyone, no matter where you are in that process.
Okay, and then we've got someone who said, what counties does Best Buddies have contracts with for VR in Texas?
So in Texas, we are contracted with in 12 counties. Split. We have Williamson and Travis in Central Texas, and then the other 10 are split between Houston and DFW. And I couldn't tell you them all off the top of my head, but my contact information is at the end of this. So if you want to reach out to me directly and tell me what area you're in, I can tell you if we cover that area.
And I also just wanted to mention too, from the Workforce Commission, the VR program for the families that are enrolled in the VR program, you know, from time to time we hear frustrations that they haven't heard from their counselor, or they've had 10 different counselors, or nobody gets back to them, or their kid's been in the program for 2 years and they haven't made any progress. I just want to encourage and just say, don't give up. You know, just like all of the other organizations out there, there has been a lot of turnover since COVID, and new employees and training and things like that. But this is really a wonderful program, and it has, you know, for a lot of parents, it's had to take a lot of patience because of some of those issues that I mentioned. Those issues are real and they have existed, but don't throw in the towel is basically what I'm saying. Don't throw in the towel. If there's not a good relationship with your counselor, reach out to the community lead, and if they need to reassign a counselor, they absolutely can. Don't give up and be proactive. Reach back out to them. A lot of these counselors have huge workloads and lots of people that they are serving. So don't be afraid to reach out by email, by phone, get a new counselor. I just want to say don't give up, because it is a wonderful program.
I echo that a million times. Be the squeaky wheel. I have worked with people who I know will never work with Best Buddies. Maybe we don't serve their area, or whatever it is. But I have given them a script and I have said, copy and paste this into an email and send it here. So work with a provider who knows the counselors that can help. We do that all the time. I help guide people through that process, even if they can't work with Best Buddies for whatever reason. So next, volunteer. So this is a great opportunity for you to add experience to your resume for someone who's just getting into the workforce, but this will build hard and soft skills, building good habits like getting up on time, dressing appropriately, staying on task. It's a great motivator, and it's a safe place to learn and fail. I am a mom. I understand we do not want our children and our loved ones to fail, but I could bet that everyone on this call has failed at some point in their life and they learned something from it and it made them better at whatever it was. But this is also a great opportunity to build confidence. This, again, volunteering is it's a safe place, because even if they do fail, they're not losing an income, which they may rely on. So it's a safer place for them to try out some things and, again, build some of those skills to add to their resume. Next, you want to identify strengths, weaknesses, and interests. This is another great way, using that volunteer experience. You can do that through the volunteer, but you can also, I love these personality tests. I love ONET. I think this is such a cool tool that a lot of people don't know about, because you can put in all your interests, and it will match you to careers that you may be interested in, but it also gives you information about each one. So it'll tell you what the education requirements are, what the outlook is, what the pay range is, what a typical day looks like, are there advancement opportunities? You can get a lot of information so that you can start really exploring different career options. You also want to ask people around you, your teachers, parents, and friends, because we are our own worst critics. So I like to get other people's advice. What do you think that I'm really good at? What do you think I'm not good at? Because sometimes we're also a little delusional and we think that we're really good at something that maybe we're not so much. But it's great to get another person's perspective so that they can start to give you ideas about skills that you have that maybe you didn't even think about. And then you want to identify and eliminate potential jobs. It is so important to know what kind of job you're looking for, but it's also important to know what kind of jobs you don't want. And you'll see the little dotted line over here on the right-hand side. I did that because that's Best Buddies can start kind of at that level, we can help you connect with VR. We can help you through that process. But this is all of the stuff that we also do with our participants. So it's important for me when I'm working with someone to know what they want and what they absolutely do not want. I had a participant, he said he never wanted to clean another thing in his life. He's done so many cleaning jobs. So I knew that helped me eliminate a lot of jobs that would require him to do some cleaning. So that's also important that we sometimes miss. And then this will also be a great time for you to identify needs for accommodations, especially if you're volunteering. You may have already seen some accommodations that you may have needed, and you can start to practice that disclosure script if that's something that you're looking to do. Next, I think this is such a great opportunity for people. If only I had been able to job shadow when I was first entering the workforce, because I would have not taken a lot of jobs that I took. But you want to do some research. You want to use Google, read job boards, look at the job descriptions. You can see what jobs typically look like. You can do some informational interviews and site visits where you go and actually ask all the questions that you want to ask. Instead of you being interviewed to hire, you're interviewing them to see if it's a job that you might actually want. You can also, I love to take my participants to shadow and learn what a typical day looks like. You always want to ask first. You want to dress to fit in because you want to just be a shadow. You don't want to stand out. You're just there to observe. You have to use your best manners, and it's great to take notes because sometimes we forget things later in the day. Especially me, I need to take notes on everything if I want to remember it. But this is a great opportunity. I had one guy, his dream job was to work at Chick-fil-A. He was obsessed with Chick-fil-A. He eats Chick-fil-A every single Thursday since he was in middle school. They made it Chick-fil-A Thursdays because he was eating it multiple times a week. So they had to designate a special day. And that was his dream job. So then when we got to work together, all he told me, I want to work at Chick-fil-A. It's like, cool, let's go check out what a day is like at Chick-fil-A. So we just sat and watched everything that was happening. And it turns out that eating at Chick-fil-A and working at Chick-fil-A are two very different experiences. So he decided Chick-fil-A was not for him. It was too fast paced. It was crazy. People were running around all the time, and he's much more introverted. He wanted to work by himself. So it turns out Chick-fil-A was not the best fit for him. But had we not done this, he wouldn't have been successful. We would have gotten him a job at Chick-fil-A and he would have hated it. So it's important to do some research. Next, you're going to start to build a resume. The piece that's usually the hardest is collecting all the information that you need. So my recommendation is to have a document that you keep. It's a living document. And as soon as you get a job, you're writing down how much money you're making, your supervisor's name, their contact information, all of the information that you will someday need for a resume or a job application. You want to keep it. That way you're not having to go and search for it every time you apply for a new job. You also always ask permission to use someone as a reference. Microsoft, and I even like Canva, have free templates for you to use that are really easy. Just plug and play the information. You want to include transferable skills, especially if there's no work experience, things like communication skills or computer skills, things that can be used in multiple different fields. Make sure that those are on there. And then keep it brief. I sometimes blow people's mind when I say this, but your resume is not to get you the job. Your resume is to get you the interview, and then you can elaborate. I am a hiring manager, and I'm in the process of hiring now. So I've seen resumes come through where it's 4 pages long, single spaced. I'm not reading all of that. I don't have time. I want to scan it. I want to get the general idea of who you are and what you're looking for. And then you can elaborate once you actually get the interview. You also can build multiple resumes where you might have one for retail and one for food service, because maybe you want you're looking at 2 different kinds of jobs. You want to tailor it. And then we can stay on this slide, it's fine. So the next thing that you're going to do is create an elevator pitch. So this is something that you can give if you're in an elevator. So between 60, I would say even between 30 and 60 seconds, but 60 to 90 is fine too. It's going to answer who you are, what you do, where you're going, what do you want, and why should I? Why should I hire you? Why should I connect you to someone that I know? Sometimes when you ask someone, tell me about yourself, they could go off on a tangent. You end up hearing all the family drama. And so sometimes I like to use the pause method. It keeps it very concise. So it's profile, who you are, why are you even here, your academic skills, your work experience, and then the skills, what you bring to the table. Sorry, I should have said academic experience or academic history. So you could say, I'm Cheyenne. I got my bachelor's degree in organizational leadership. I have worked in this field for 10 years and I have the skills of XYZ. And you want to practice it a lot because you will use it all the time. Any networking events, any interview you go to, the first thing that they're going to ask is, tell me about yourself. So this is a great way to keep it concise, keep it narrow. We don't want to spill all the family tea in that question. Next, I love this. This is optional. Create a LinkedIn profile. I stalk everyone on social media and LinkedIn. If I see someone apply, I want to go in and look at their LinkedIn profile. I want to see who they're connected with and what they've done in the past. You want to make sure your location's accurate. You can also select the option that says open to work. That makes you easier to find by employees. And you want to connect to people when you meet them at networking events or when you are building your contact list. You want to make sure that you connect them on LinkedIn, add a little note, and then be active. You want to post and comment and share, and that gets you seen by employers. And then they also have job listings that are also, usually those are cross-posted between different job boards, but you can also see that there are job listings there. So then you want to build your network. This is so important because 70 to 80% of jobs are never made public. So I just get a piece of paper and list every single person that you know. You can start to realize you know more people than you think you do, and you can start reaching out to them. So it's, a friend of my mom works here, or I know the guy at the gas station that I see every time. I know him, and you want to list as many people as you know because you're going to start reaching out to them. Because if those jobs are never made public, then that's how they get spread, is by word of mouth. You can attend networking events. There are always free networking events. Just look them up online. And again, add anyone you meet on LinkedIn and make sure you follow up. Say, hey, I met you at this event last week. It was great talking to you. I would love to send over my resume so you could forward it to your friend that you mentioned. This is a big one that I've seen for my participants. Find at least 2 outfits that you have ready to go for you to interview. You want to make sure that you try them on often because I remember the first time I did this presentation, it was right when we were starting to come out of lockdown, and our bodies may have looked different than when we first went into the pandemic. So we want to make sure that our clothes actually fit properly. We want to make sure that there's no stains or holes that may have come about in some weird way that maybe we didn't know about, but you want to have at least 2 full outfits ready to go, have them hanging in the closet. So as soon as you get that call for an interview, you're not scrambling to find something that fits. So this is a big one that I saw a lot with my participants because sometimes we're just not ready and we think that it's going to be a month before we get an interview. And then all of a sudden they want us to come in later that afternoon. So always have 2 outfits ready to go. Mock interviews is a huge one. We're actually doing a mock interview workshop this afternoon with many of our participants, but we want to practice those interview skills. You want to perform like you practice, or you perform like you practice. So you want to make sure that you get enough practice in. It's a great confidence builder. You can interview with a job coach. You can interview with a parent or a friend or family. I like to go and recruit local business people because when there's a little bit of stress, because it's a stranger and not someone that you know and love, it can prepare you a little bit better. But you also want to have really high standards. I give anyone who helps me do a mock interview, I tell them, don't let anything slide. If you wouldn't let it slide in a typical interview, don't let it slide here. You want to give them a score and give them feedback and say, hey, you were really good at X, but you were not good at this. And this is something that we need to work on. But that's going to give them an opportunity to learn and grow. And then once you have those interview skills down, you're ready to go. You can start applying. These are some of the job boards that I like. And that next slide, I use Indeed a lot. Inclusively is a good one because it's dedicated for people interested in hiring people with disabilities. LinkedIn, again, is there, but then also make sure your network knows what you're doing and what kind of job that you're looking for. And then this is, so the next steps, the next things that I'm going to cover is just how to start the conversation, because we have to start talking about jobs early. And there's a lot of ways to do it. Again, I'm a parent, so if I sat and asked my daughter, we've all been there. How was school today? Good. What'd you do? Nothing. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. So we have to find different ways to really start talking about it. So here's an example. Talk about your future plans. So if you're hoping to get a promotion at work or you're learning a new skill, ask your child, what are you planning to do in the next few years? You can also observe jobs when you're out and about. So if you have to run by the bank before dinner, you could say, if you think that it's true, man, I could really see you working at a bank. Or even when you're at a restaurant, there are so many jobs. When people think working at a restaurant, you may think waiter, but there's a hostess, there's someone cleaning, there's someone cooking the food, there's someone taking the orders from the takeout desk. There's so many different jobs in each place that you're at. So start to have those conversations just to bring some awareness to front of mind. Another one is to relate jobs to other goals. So if your neighbor gets a new car, you can talk about the neighbor's new car and say, what kind of car would you drive? If you could drive any car. Oh, wow, what kind of job would you have to make those kinds of payments? So it just gets the wheels thinking and training our brain to think about the future and relating, oh, if I want to have a car, I probably need to have a job to make that car payment. You can also let them help you with your goals. So if you have an interview coming up, you can let them help you practice those questions and let them interview you, and then you can switch and give them a chance to practice too. So getting them involved in the conversation. You also want to model behavior. So if you need to pick up an application or fill out one online, let them go with you, let them help you. You can let them pick out an outfit for a big presentation. So having them involved in that behavior. One of my favorite things to do, my daughter is 9. And so we're already starting to talk about what do you want to be when you grow up? We start talking about that as soon as they can talk, right? But you can make it a game, because at 3, at 5, at 9, you're not thinking about careers, but you can think about a game. So we love to play Would You Rather. So would you rather be a vet or a human doctor? Would you rather work at a desk or in a factory? Would you rather work inside or outside? And it's just a fun game, and it starts to get them thinking. Here are some resources. The Startup ER case is for the Texas workforce. So if you're not in Texas, I'm not sure where everyone's at on this call, but that is for the Texas workforce specifically. All of the other ones, other than Navigate Life Texas, could be used anywhere, and a lot of great resources for you. The Job Accommodation Network, Ticket to Work, all of those great programs. So you have a lot of resources there. And then I think that last slide is just my contact information if you need to reach out to me directly.
So Cheyenne, you have provided a lot of good information, and even though that we have had a webinar with Best Buddies in the past, I think I was thinking more of the friendship side of the house, not the job and the employment side of the house. So you have certainly enlightened me as it relates to some of the services that you guys provide. And even on that previous page, I think where we were looking at some of the resources, talk to us a little bit more. I think most of these resources, people have seen a lot of, but Inclusively is one that is new to me. So talk to us more about this Inclusively website.
Sure. So we have actually had a partnership. Best Buddies has had a partnership with Inclusively. We've done a lot of trainings with them to get them on board and understand what our mission is, and provided them some resources. So what a company does, if a company is interested in hiring someone with a disability, they are open to hiring anyone, not just people with disabilities. They can post it just like you post a job on Indeed or on LinkedIn or Career Builder. You can also post it on Inclusively. So you can go and see, which is so nice because it's already showing that they have a dedication and an interest in creating a more inclusive workspace. Instead of going in blind, not knowing how a company might feel about something, they're kind of showing that they are ready and interested and proactive in that area, which is really nice. So it's mostly in bigger cities. So where I live, there's not any job postings, but I know I've seen a lot in Dallas, Austin, and in Houston. So it could be a good option for people when they start to look at different companies.
And I just wanted to mention here where it says find your local LIDA. This is the Local Intellectual Disability Authority. And this, your local LIDA is where you're going to get on those waiver lists. Some of them, HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice, is where you're going to get on those lists. There is a separate phone number for MDCP, class, and deaf blind with multiple disabilities. There's a separate phone number for that, also a separate phone number for the Star Plus waiver. But for those of you that are in the greater Houston area, your local authority is called the Harris Center. It used to be called MHMR. I know in Fort Bend County it's Texana, but this link will allow you to put your zip code in, and it'll tell you exactly who your local authority is if you don't know. And one thing I wanted to mention with that too is when you guys are on the waiver interest list, if you change counties, if you move counties, your local authority changes, but you do not lose your place in line. So if you move from Harris County to Fort Bend County, you would move from the Harris Center to Texana, but you're not starting over on the list. So I always just want to mention that to you. Plus, we have a complete webinar that explains the Medicaid waivers in the state of Texas. For anybody that is joining us from out of state, all states have Medicaid waivers, and they're different in each state, but all states do have them. Some states have a very, very long waiting list. Texas happens to be one of those, and they suggest upward of 17 years. But other states don't have any waiting list at all. So you do want to check out the Medicaid waivers in your state if you are from out of state. Okay.
And I would just add that's one I added, what is HCS specifically because that's one of the longer ones in Texas. Such a long wait list. It is. So many people don't know about it. And anytime I meet someone, that's one of my first questions because I want to make sure that they're on that list. Again, I was just texting my friend yesterday whose 5-year-old is about to be diagnosed with autism. And that's what I told her. I said, the very first thing that you need to do is connect with your LIDA and you need to get on that HCS waiting list because even if you do not need services now, you might one day and you need to go ahead. You don't want to wait until it's too late. And unfortunately, that wait list is so long in Texas. So definitely a huge advocate. Again, it's one of those things where it's overwhelming because it's a government agency, but so many resources exist if you can just get through the process.
And I just like to mention that those waivers are designed because people talk about the waivers and they talk about the list and they talk about the waiting list, but then what are they even for? And they're really designed to waive off some of the cost of care for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services. So they may pay for respite services or attendance services or various therapies and things like that. So they can really defray some of the cost of caring for a loved one with a disability. That's the point. Because I've talked to people before and talked to them about the waivers, and they're like, I don't want my child to be institutionalized. But that is the exact reason for those waivers, is to keep your loved one in home and community-based services. So I think that they're an important factor when it comes into the planning process. Guys, we're going to finish up a little bit early today. We do have webinars on all of these topics. We always suggest that, there's some things that you should keep on your radar: developing a special needs care plan, knowing how much do you need to fund the special needs trust, learning about the waivers and the interest list and how to get on the list, understanding SSI, SSDI, knowing when to apply and knowing the differences between those programs, ABLE accounts, having your beneficiary designation set up. We don't ever want to leave money outright directly to an individual with a disability because it would cause them to go over that $2,000 limit, and then they would lose their ability to have Medicaid and also any of those Medicaid waivers which require Medicaid eligibility. Special needs trust, there's two places you can have money. Over $2,000, and that's in a special needs trust and an ABLE account. Outside of, basically those money in those accounts are not going to be accounted against that person for SSI and Medicaid purposes. Anybody that's having a child that's transitioning and they're getting child support, and child support will continue post age 18, that child support will be counted against them for SSI purposes. So it's really important that you work with an attorney to get that redirected to a first-party special needs trust so they'll be eligible for SSI and Medicaid. We suggest touring residential living communities if the long term, and it might not be now. Some of these waiting lists can be 5 years. A lot of them, even to get on the list, you have to go and do a tour. Some of them offer virtual tours. A lot of families are maybe somewhat against this because they feel like that they're putting their loved ones somewhere. But we have a lot of families that have their loved ones living in residential living communities or group homes or other things like that. And the resident is happy. They have friends. They have community. They have a job. There's a lot of things. And so whether it's long-term or short-term, meaning you need some place that now may, or you're aging and you can't provide the care services that you once did, just be aware of those lists because sometimes they can be long. And as far as guardianship, alternatives to guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision-making agreement. Guys, we have webinars on every single one of these topics. And the thing is there's a lot of information that goes into every single one of these topics. So that's why they have their own webinar. But we also have webinars on post-high school educational options for individuals with a disability as well. So you guys can check all of those out on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. In today's slides, you're going to have a link for our upcoming webinars so you can kind of look at those topics for anything that you may have interest in and as far as your journey and where you are with your loved one. We work on a collaborative team here at Consolidated Planning Group. We don't always get to all of the questions in a webinar, but we do offer free personalized consultations. So if you had a question that you didn't want to bring up in the group, you can feel free to reach out. And we will have this scheduling link as a QR code where you can hover your camera over it, and it'll take you to a calendar where you can schedule your free personalized consultation, and we can answer additional questions at that time. During the consultation, it is for us to understand more about you and the planning that you've done so far, learn a little bit more about the questions that you have, and share a little bit more about who we are, how we work, and the various doors that you can walk through with Consolidated Planning Group. So we got a couple of questions. How long can a young adult receive your employment services?
You can get employment services as young as 14 through a transition program at school or through providers in the community. And then typically in Texas, job coaching support ends when the funding ends. So the Texas workforce only pays typically about the first 90 days. So some providers will stop providing services after that 90 days. Again, Best Buddies does not. We provide the ongoing support, even though it's unfunded. So if you're wanting something if 90 days will be enough for you, then that's okay. Just know what you need going in when you're choosing your provider.
One question says, are there requirements to receive VR services such as communication skills, attention span, adaptive behavior? And yes, there are some requirements. I mean, the person has to be have the ability to work, and there also has to be a willingness. So we've seen where the parent wants the child to be in VR and the child has zero interest in being in VR. So that is not workable. However, what I would say is that we do have the Texas Workforce Commission webinar on our YouTube channel that basically, kind of explains those programs and kind of talks about what the requirements are, how to get started, how to apply. Also, what I will mention is, the public schools are in session now. There is typically a VR counselor at most of the local high schools, and you can ask the guidance counselor for further information. And you can also go to Start My VR, and there will be a link to where you can start your VR on your own. You don't have to go through the counselor at the school. You can. It might be more helpful to go through the counselor at school, but you can also do do that right online yourself through Start My VR. Okay, and then someone said, is approval for SSI based off of the parent's income, even if the child is over 18 and is currently working? The approval for SSI, the person has to have a disability, and it's based off, if the person is over age 18, it is based off of their income and assets, not the parents, even if the child is under guardianship. So if you have been denied based off of your income and assets and your child is over 18, then that was an error and you need to go back to the Social Security Administration and reapply, because it is not based off of the parent's income and assets, even if the child lives in your house, even if the child is under guardianship, if they are over 18. If they are under 18, it is definitively based off of the parent's income and assets. And that is why so many people do not qualify prior to age 18. Well, Cheyenne, you have been amazing today. So thank you for that. And so for the families that are on here, just one real quick, the families that are on here that their loved one is already enrolled in VR, can they just, specifically just reach out to Best Buddies? Can they just call?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you choose Best Buddies through your VR counselor, then they reach out to us as well. But people are more than welcome to reach out to us, because I encourage people, interview your providers, figure out if it's a good fit before you choose someone. You're more than welcome to reach out to us directly. And again, sometimes people don't end up choosing us. They just need a little guidance and need to know what to ask for. And we're always willing to help.
Wonderful, thank you. And I see that Giovanni is here today. That and we regularly refer for her area, but she put the VR contact number, the 512 number. It's open from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And I know that it has been recommended in the past, like for instance, if you started your VR online and you haven't heard from anybody, don't wait. Pick up the phone and call that number, that 512 number, and let's get the ball rolling so you can get assigned to the counselor and you can get things moving. So I really appreciate you putting that in the chat box for us today. Well, thanks everybody for spending your lunch hour with us. It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Cheyenne, for going over all of this with us today. Really, really great information, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.